Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Heartfulness Wellness webinar. We're really glad to be here with all of you today. My name is Mamata Venkat. I will be your host. I will be helping to guide you through the next 45 minutes to an hour as we sit down and talk about heart-based emotional intelligence. I am excited to introduce James Joseph, and I'm excited to tell you guys a little bit more about him before we get started with our webinar. He's someone I've known my entire life, so it feels a little interesting to be reading off his bio, but I'm excited to be doing that anyway. James Joseph is a senior trainer with the Heartfulness Institute. He's been a meditator for 3 decades and has provided training in heartfulness meditation to thousands of people in corporate settings, as well as large workshops across the globe. He also conducts spiritual immersive workshops on-site and off-site in heartfulness meditation centers. James describes himself as a lifelong student of transformation, and he believes that each of us has the opportunity to manifest our highest potential if we invest in ourselves. A few minutes of meditation every day can help create new states of mind that change our neural patterns in line with our goals. These new neural patterns become permanent when we create habits that are in resonance with our inner nature. He believes that we can be in a meditative state of mind for 24 hours a day if we learn to imbibe and expand the condition achieved during meditation. He uses tools from heart-based emotional intelligence methodology that helps keep emotions in balance and allows participants to grow in emotional maturity, balance, and resilience. James brings to his session his rich and diverse corporate experience working with people in the areas of technology, human transformation, marketing and strategy, and more. He believes that it's a blend of IQ and EQ that achieves success, fulfillment, and happiness in all facets of life. In his sessions, he creates an environment in which participants can practice the techniques and can actually experience the shifts in their consciousness. James is currently an executive vice president with HTC Global Services, a global IT services provider headquartered in Troy, Michigan. By qualification, he is an engineer with an MBA, and he lives in Troy, Michigan with his wife, Jyoti, and they're blessed with 3 children. He practices energy healing along with Jyoti and uses a unique modality developed using advanced intuition and clairvoyance. James is passionate about meditation. His mission is to participate in bringing the gift of meditation to every household in the world to create a world that is filled with peace and happiness. I've known you my whole life and I didn't know half of that. I'm so glad to be able to have this conversation with you, James Uncle. There's a lot of pieces that you're going to go through today that we've often talked about over the years. And I think there's a lot of science behind heart-based emotional intelligence that a lot of our viewers are really going to benefit from. So thank you for being here and thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you, Mamata. So thank you for the wonderful introduction. I can only say that you look good as usual.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So of course, the concept of emotional intelligence is one that's becoming more and more popular. It's becoming one that's been incorporated more and more into the corporate workspace as people are starting to recognize that it's critical to success. Given everything that's going on with the coronavirus pandemic, emotional intelligence is becoming even more prevalent and even more important. Can you tell us a little bit more about what emotional intelligence is and how it's relevant given everything that's going on in the world right now?
That's a good introductory question, Mamata. And like you said, I think emotional intelligence is now well known, in all facets of life, especially in corporations and non-profit organizations which are dealing with people, because as the environment becomes more complex, people have to become skilled at managing those complexities. And primary way of dealing with complexities is through intelligence. And emotional intelligence is one of the most useful, one of the most important intelligence that is out there. So let me start with a brief definition of emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and understand emotions in the self and others, and it is the ability to use this awareness to skillfully manage behavior and relationships. So it's got two elements. One is the element of the self, me, and the element of others. How do I manage myself and how do I manage others? But before I manage, I need to recognize and understand. So all these are part of emotional intelligence, and there are several facets of emotional intelligence that we will go through. And many of you may have a question. So what is all this emotional intelligence all about? What is the use of emotional intelligence? So emotional intelligence is what we use when we resolve a conflict. For example, you're sitting in the office and somebody says something that creates a negative atmosphere. So what do? If you have emotional intelligence, you step in to resolve that conflict. You see a conflict between you and others, a potential conflict, or between two other people in a team, or between a husband and wife, or between you and your children. So emotional intelligence is something that really helps you to resolve conflicts. And even before that, even if you take it a little step, take a step back, emotional intelligence is the ability to understand or see a conflict or sense a conflict even before it occurs, a potential conflict, and try to diffuse it even before it goes out of hand. Emotional intelligence is what you do when you have a deep conversation with your spouse or your children, not only in moments of conflict, but at times when there is peace and you're having a deep conversation. The ability to have a deep conversation, the ability to listen empathetically, the ability to respect the other person, the ability to trust the other person, ability to create an atmosphere where people can be open. And emotional intelligence is what you use when you inspire yourself and inspire others. Inspire yourself to do the things that you want to do and the way that you want to do to adhere to your values, and inspire others. And emotional intelligence is what you do when you stay calm in a stressful situation. So let's say, you can see something brewing. Let's say somebody challenged you, with an email or with a question during a meeting, and you're able to maintain your composure. You're able to maintain your calmness. That is what emotional intelligence is all about. And your second question about what is the relevance of emotional intelligence in these times? Emotional intelligence is recognized as the most important skill for individuals for stress management, to find happiness, relationship building, and generally success in life. And though emotional intelligence is required at all times, it is most relevant in times of crisis. For example, let us look at the situation that we are in today. We are cooped up at home, at least in most countries. And we are, prior to the lockdown situation, if people went to work, let's say husband is working and the wife is at home, you are only meeting at certain times of the day, but now you're right in each other's face. So it requires a lot of skill to manage the situation, not only with your spouses and partners, but with your parents, especially if you're living in a larger household, with your children who may be at different ages. So, and also we are now interacting through Zoom and other virtual media. So all this requires the skill for self-awareness, self-management, which means self-regulation, self-motivation, social awareness, and social skills. And we will talk about these as we move forward. So did I answer your question, Mamata?
did. I really appreciated what you said initially, which was emotional intelligence is almost the ability to preempt any sort of conflict. There's going through conflict with emotional intelligence, with being able to have empathy, sympathy, and compassion for others. But then there's also the ability to be able to see what might happen and skillfully avoid it, or to create a conversation in a way that is filled with empathy and compassion. So I really liked that. And I think everyone can relate to being at home right now with the pandemic and getting used to being around their family members more, to being around their siblings more. There are definitely challenges with that, but I think we're all learning how to lean into that emotional intelligence. So you definitely answered my question. IQ, intelligence quotient, is more commonly associated with academics. What is the difference between IQ and EQ?
Good question. So let me talk to you a little bit about IQ. IQ is also called cognitive intelligence or emotional quotient, and it measures our cognitive competencies, basically the thinking capabilities, the analytical skills that we use, especially in academics. And it definitely helps you through school, because if you don't have a good IQ, it is difficult to get good grades. But the most important thing that we need to understand about IQ is that it is stable. It remains stable almost throughout your life. Once you reach a certain age, it continues to remain the same. It is quite difficult to increase or improve your IQ. I wouldn't say it is impossible, though many people say that. I think it is possible, but typically it remains stable. But EQ, or emotional intelligence, it measures emotional competencies. For example, if you have, even as a student, you have situations where you have issues with other students or issues with teachers, and also the various emotions that you go through, the states of mind that you go through even in your studies. And many of you have recognized that especially a graduate program can be or the undergraduate program, in India we call it graduate program, it can be very stressful. So how do you manage the stress? For example, the other day I had a young lady who's a student of engineering, or no, she's medicine. And she says, James Angala, I have to write this test. So I said, what's the problem? She says, I'm going to fail. I said, why are you going to fail? Haven't you studied enough? She said, I have studied enough, but I have this feeling that I'm going to fail. And she's panicking. Now, that is an emotional state. Every time she thinks about exams, she starts panicking. Now, these are all, the field of emotional intelligence. How do we bring about, how do we use emotional intelligence to get through these situations? So emotional intelligence is about feeling, it's about emotions, and it gets you through life. While IQ gets you through school, emotional intelligence gets you through life. And the most important thing about emotional intelligence is it can be learned. You can learn, you can improve your self-awareness, you can improve your self-management, you can improve your self-motivation, you can improve your social awareness and your social skills. So that's the good news about emotional intelligence.
That's great. So what are some of the characteristics about someone who has emotional intelligence? And if someone is conscious and really takes the time to learn emotional intelligence, whether it's something that they've had for a long time or it's something that they need to work on, what are the ways that they change? How do they evolve? What does someone who has those characteristics look like?
So in the last 30 years that I have been studying and practicing emotional intelligence, I think the outcome of being emotionally intelligent can be expressed in three qualities. One is emotional maturity. And emotional maturity is the ability to take decisions and deal with life with a certain amount of equipoise and equanimity. And then there is emotional resilience, which which deals with the strength that you require emotionally to deal with issues, and emotional balance, which is the ability to regulate your reactions to the inputs that you get through your senses or through your thinking process. So let us look at a person, a profile of a person who is emotionally intelligent. And I'm sure all of us want to be this person. The emotionally intelligent person is calm under pressure. And all of us know that sometimes we just lose it. We are good people, otherwise, but when pressure comes, we become quite different. We act quite different. But an emotionally intelligent person manages to keep their calm, composure under pressure. They're courageous and confident. When they're faced with a problem, they're able to jump in and deal with it rather than avoid it. Many of us try to run away from problems. It is part of our makeup. But an emotionally intelligent person is courageous and confident. They're compassionate and caring. They are genuinely compassionate. They are able to go beyond their own, selfish outlook to be able to open themselves and be compassionate and caring. And compassion also requires courage, right? And we talked about courage already. They're empathetic listeners. They're able to listen to the other person from their perspective. Empathy is when you're able to stand in the shoes of somebody else and understand what they're really saying. And sometimes the words don't really reflect what the other person is saying. You got to listen to the body language. You got to listen to the tone of the voice to fully understand where that person is coming from. And all of you have experienced this, that we may hear a few words, and the same words spoken by the same person may be interpreted differently by different people, depending on where they come from, depending on what frame of mind they are in. An emotionally intelligent person has a well-developed intuition. He has a good understanding of what goes behind the scenes, what is not being said. An emotionally intelligent person is flexible. They're authentic and genuine. What you see is what you get. They're not trying to hide something. They're not trying to pretend something. They're not trying to impress you with something, which is what most of us do most of the time. They're able to build meaningful relationships based on trust and fairness, not a one-way traffic, not to take advantage of somebody, not to manipulate somebody, but a relationship that is based on mutual respect and trust. They're passionate about things that they do. They follow their passions. They're inspiring. And you can be inspiring only if you are inspired. And that is what an emotionally intelligent person. And they are optimistic and happy because they see the positive side of things. They have gone through several issues and they know that this too shall pass. And there is no reason to be anxious or afraid or fearful when an issue is in front of you. So here, if you notice, I haven't talked about any of the moralistic, I didn't say they are good people or they are, their character is great. No, we are not talking about that. That is a separate topic by itself. But this is about maturity, resilience, and balance from the perspective of emotions.
Do you think an emotionally intelligent person is someone who is able to practice self-compassion first?
Yes. I think, that is why this is an enormously huge subject. At the base of, like you said very correctly, at the base of an emotionally intelligent person is the love for the self and the compassion for the self. Without that, without being compassionate to yourself, you'll never be compassionate to others, to be able to give compassion to others.
Yeah, the metaphor of being on a plane and having to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you try to put it on others. You can't take care of others until you can take care of yourself. We keep using the word emotion, emotional intelligence, and I think we're also accustomed to it that we really forget what it means. So can we define emotion?
Yes. So emotion is is a very interesting subject. Some people call emotion energy in motion, and I'm going to talk about the chemistry behind and the biochemistry and the electro and the neurobiology behind emotions in a very short while. But let's look at emotion itself. Let's become familiar with emotions, because many of us uh, do not have the capability or the ability to label our emotions. So this is a study that was done by scientifically to see, like I said before, emotions are states of mind. Uh, Certain emotions create a feeling of expansion, and certain emotions create a feeling of contraction. For example, when you feel fear, you feel a contraction. You feel a pain in your abdomen. You feel a pain in your chest. And sometimes it is in the back. But when you feel peaceful, when you feel joy, when you feel love, you feel expanded. So this study just confirmed this intuitive knowledge. So what you see is the numbers that you see is the vibration of the emotion in measured in hertz. So the lowest emotional state is when you feel guilt and shame. When you feel guilt and shame, you feel very contracted, and this is something that you can experience. If you look back at yourself, when you feel ashamed about something, you feel very contracted, right? When you feel apathy towards something, indifferent towards something, you feel, or when you're avoiding something, you feel contraction. In grief, when somebody passes away, or when you lose a job, or when you lose a loved one, you feel contracted. Fear contracts you. And then as you can see, the energy increases, the vibration increases with desire, anger, pride, and courage. You feel much more expanded than fear. And then there is a neutrality, which is even more expansive: willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace. Now, this is not a perfect science. Now, if you look at the ancient traditions, like the Indian traditions, there is something called rasa. You must have heard about this word, rasa and bhava. Rasa is the sentiment, bhava is the expression of those sentiments. There is even a practice, a yogic practice called Rasa Sadhana, which is basically an ability to master your emotions, because the ancients knew that emotional intelligence is the most important skill in life, like scientists are discovering in the West. And they learned all the nuances of emotions. And if you're interested in, you can read, there are several publications on rasas and the 9 rasas and how they are associated with our emotional states, how they are associated with the three gunas and the sheaths. So it's a science that has been researched in detail in the East, but now gaining a lot of acceptance and popularity from a scientific perspective in the West. And as we talk further, I'll jump into the neurobiology behind emotions. This awareness is required to an extent as a basis for us to understand that we can actually change our emotions or the way we feel.
Wow, that is a large definition for a word that I think often gets minimized. Can you tell us a little bit more about how emotions are formed?
Good question. So let's look at the anatomy of the brain, and all of us know that we have the brain is not just in the cerebral cortex, not just in the head, but it is all over the body. Our neural network extends to every square centimeter or nanometer of our body, and we have about 100 billion neurons, and each neuron can have at least 5,000 connections through dendrites. And so if every neuron can connect 5,000 different ways, just imagine the number of connections that we have and how complex we are. And it is through these connections that messages are passed from the brain to the cells and the organs. And they're called, the chemicals that are formed or through which the messages are transmitted. They are called neurotransmitters. So there is an electrical impulse and there is a chemical equivalent of that electrical impulse. So it is very, very complex. It is said that as human beings, we have about 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day. But somebody recently also said that we have close to 400 plus emotional experiences a day. And if you pay a little attention to yourself, you will realize that you go through several different kinds of emotional experiences depending on who you are with. Even in a call with your office colleagues, you could be going through a spectrum of emotions. So there are two systems in our human nature or human condition. What is called the autonomic nervous system, and most of you must have heard about it, and don't be frightened with this terminology. And the other is the neuroendocrine system. I will explain this in very simple terms. It's very important to understand the autonomic nervous system is the language or emotions, as you know, is the language of the body, and like thoughts are the language of the brain. So whenever the brain perceives a threat, it sends an impulse through the neural network, and which is received immediately by the different organs and the muscles and the cells. So for example, imagine when we were, cavemen and cave women, and you heard your little child playing outside, and you opened the door, removed the stone, and you looked outside, and you see something moving in the bushes, a little away from the cave. So you're immediately suspecting, my God, this could be a tiger or a lion. So what happens to you? If your little child is, just moving towards that thing, you would probably take your spear and rush towards that movement. So it requires something to be triggered within you. And why you are able to do that is because of the release of what is called noradrenaline, which is the sister of adrenaline. It helps you to, it pumps blood into your heart, into your eyes, into your hands, and you rush, you make a, piercing noise, and you rush towards the tiger, right? So that impulse, that energy, that burst of energy is created by the release of noradrenaline. If that is not released, you will not be able to do what you would otherwise do. Or optionally, let's say, the child was not playing, and you just opened the door and you saw the movement in the bushes. You would probably just close the door and get back into your, or run away. So that requires a surge of adrenaline to run away. So it pumps a lot of blood, not only to your heart and your eyes, but to your legs, so that you can run, right? And the third scenario is, let's say, your girl, she's, let's say, 7 years old or 5 years old, and she's coming out of the cave, and she sees this movement, and she sees the tiger looking at her. What would happen to her? She would probably freeze. She would freeze because she cannot move. She is scared. And that is created through the release of something called acetylcholine. So you see, we are under the control of these hormones that are transmitted into our system, released into our system, based on the neural, the electrical impulses that pass through our neurons. So this is the mechanism that gives us the energy to run away, or to fight, or it allows us to freeze in place. And sometimes it is required. You see small animals, they cover when they see a big animal. And that is possible through the release of these hormones. And this is the function of the autonomic nervous system. And you must have heard about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. In the sympathetic phase, you're active, you feel energized, and parasympathetic, you're excited. And in the parasympathetic phase, you feel calm and peaceful again. So let's say when a deer sees a lion, her sympathetic nervous system is activated and she runs for her life. And when she looks back and the lion is gone, she relaxes and becomes, her parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. But in human beings, it doesn't happen all the time. Let's say somebody insulted us, right? When you are sitting in the train, or somebody is driving by and insulting you, what happens? If it was a lion, if it was a deer, it would have just forgotten, shaken its tail and forgotten about it. But not with the human beings. We harbor it, maybe for days, maybe for years, maybe for all our life. So that is the difference between the human being and the animal. And then there is another system within us, which is called the neuroendocrine system. And this defines the emotion that we feel, whether it is positive or negative. The autonomic nervous system gives us the energy. The neuroendocrine system gives us the tone, the feeling. Is it positive? Is it negative? Do we like it? Do we dislike it? Do we want to go for it, or do we want to push it away? So like and dislike is what causes us to either cling to something or to reject something. So when we reject something, it is called the catabolic state, or the state of stress. And the other side, when we have positive emotions, is called the anabolic state. You see those smiley faces. That is how we feel within. So the combination of the autonomic nervous system, the energy patterns, and the neuroendocrine system, that is what defines our emotional state. So I just wanted to touch this because it is, even though it's very complex, I try to explain it in a very simple fashion, so it becomes something that you can absorb and imbibe as knowledge, and we will see how we can use this knowledge.
Definitely. I think you took a very complex concept from my 10th grade biology class and really simplified it. So I appreciate that. The topic of, or the title of the topic that we're talking about is heart-based emotional intelligence. And as I was reading your bio, of course, we alluded to the fact that you are a heartfulness meditation trainer, that a lot of what you do is heart-based. I'm sure people are curious as to how we can utilize the heart to regulate our emotions. And then, how do we define the emotional states that we go through? You mentioned earlier that we go through dozens, thousands in just a simple day. So how can we utilize the heart in order to regulate those emotional states?
So let me share with you something that I've developed over many years of self-observation, studying others, through reading a lot of literature that has been published on emotional intelligence, and the many things that I learned from my meditation teachers. So this is what I call the emotional quadrants, or the emotional grid. So you see A, B, C, and D. These are 4 different quadrants, and I'll explain this to you from the perspective of what we saw just now. So on the vertical axis, you have arousal or a state of rest, depending on the energy that is released through the release of chemicals into our system. Without these chemicals, we would have been, without any motion. And then there is the negative emotion and the positive emotion that is again determined by the release of chemicals. If cortisol is released into your system, you would feel negative emotions, and a spectrum of, it is not just one extreme, it could be a spectrum. It could be a very light emotion, or it could be a very heavy emotion. And if DHEA is released, you probably feel positive emotion. So on the left hand bottom, you have what I call the A quadrant, or the tormented quadrant, where you feel anxiety, you feel panic. And I'm sure all of you And all of us go through this feeling of anxiety and panic. And I also want to introduce an idea which can be life transforming, that most of the things that we perceive in our mind or in our brain, even the inputs that come through our senses, for example, when you see something with your eyes, you're saying, oh, I'm seeing a tree or I'm seeing a face. What is really happening? Your eyes are taking a picture of that object and sending an image, an inverted image, to your brain. And then your brain is looking through its database and identifying the object. So do you see what I am trying to say? So what do you think you are seeing? You're not seeing on the outside. Your senses are only, um, taken a picture of it. It is sent to your brain, and it is your brain that is seeing. So really, the act of seeing is done by the brain sitting in a very dark room. So in reality, we are creating the tree in front of us, or we are creating the face that we see in front of us through the power of projection of the mind. Now, this is a very complex subject. Somebody has to really think through it. But if you look at it very carefully, all the senses, the five senses that we have, they are used to bring information to our mind and to our brain, and then our brain processes it, and our mind creates that reality. Now, having said that, there are no more tigers in our life, right? We are staying at home, all safe. But you see that email from that colleague of yours who is all the time trying to harass you. You see a tiger. When you see an email from your boss, you feel the presence of a lion, right? So these are all mentalized images. And that is why the way we feel depends upon our perceptions, our beliefs, our conditioning, and how we like something or dislike something. So for example, two people can feel two very different emotions or have two different feelings triggered by the same impulse. So that is why it is possible to change, because it is all perceptions. And I'm not saying it is just pure perceptions. Some of them are real. For example, if you see a car driving straight at you, you take action. Immediately you have a pumping of adrenaline or a noradrenaline in your system. But most of the times, it is just an image. It is just a feeling. It is just a belief that is creating these changes within us. A thought, early morning, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, you suddenly feel a sense of anxiety because you have a presentation in the morning, or you have a meeting where you have to share some information, or there is, something that is going to evaluate you. So you see this quadrant of fear, anxiety, panic, or grief. You feel victimized. You lost a job, or you went through a divorce. You feel a sense of helplessness. And then there is the lowest emotional state, which is that of depression. When there is, it is beyond helplessness, it is hopelessness. So there are many emotional states in between these, but I just brought these three states for you to become familiar with this. So when you feel fear or grief or apathy, depression, you are at the lowest level of vibration. And it is very difficult to move to a feeling of, love and expansion when you are in this quadrant, right? So this is a quadrant, and let's move up, this to the top left, which is the, what I call the quadrant of aggression, where you feel anger, rage, violence, frustration, or lust, greed, envy, jealousy, desires, or pride, vanity, ego. These are all three different states of mind, and many more that I have clubbed as the quadrant B, the aggression quadrant. And now let us move into the C quadrant. I'm dealing with it in a very superficial way because these require many hours to fully understand and comprehend. Then there is a quadrant of flow, which I call C, which has courageousness, passion, motivation, acceptance, and joy, where you feel fully satisfied. When you feel you are in the flow, you lose track of time. There are certain things when you do, especially the things that you like and love, you lose track of time, right? And then the fourth quadrant, where the energy is restful and you feel positive, that is what I call the meditative quadrant. This is what you experience in meditation. You feel content, you experience bliss, you feel mergence, one with everything. It's a feeling of pure existence. And then there is that feeling of oneness, which is pure consciousness. So this is what in the traditional literature is called Satchit Anand, pure bliss, pure existence, and pure consciousness. So pure existence, pure consciousness, and pure bliss. So it is possible for us to have all these experiences in a row during the day. In the morning you feel fear, anxious, and if somebody challenges you, you feel anger, and then you go back to your team, you feel in the flow, you're lost in your work, and you come back and you meditate, you feel in a state of calmness. Now, what is a field for all this? The field for all this is the heart. It is a heart. It is not the brain. The brain has no no mind. It is the heart that feels. It is in the field of the heart that you feel all these emotions. And people ask, where is this field of the heart? It is associated with your physical heart, but it is not in the same. You can't say it is in the same location. It is, it's an extended field. The Heart Math Institute has done extensive studies to measure the field of the heart. And, they measure it 3 or 4 or 5 feet around the body. It is more powerful than the brain's electromagnetic field. It is something that other people can feel. So, for example, if you feel compassion, other people can feel that compassion. If you feel love, other people around you can feel that love. And, people who meditate know that they can transmit this even beyond the 3 feet or 5 feet. They can connect with people all around the world through the heart. So the heart is the secret to emotional intelligence, because when you go into meditation, you go into the heart in a state of stillness. But when you come out of the meditation, you could go into one of your default settings. If your default setting is, A, you'll go into A. If it is B, you'll go into B. If it is C, you'll go into C. But it is possible by mastering our heart to be able to master your emotional state. And to me, that is true emotional intelligence. These are not really dealt with by, in modern psychology and, studies, but they will. Eventually, there are people who are, experiencing and understanding the role of the heart and the energy of the heart and the field of the heart in the ability to regulate our emotions. Does that make sense?
Yes. It's a lot to process and digest, but I think what you've done beautifully is you've broken it down in a way that it is digestible. And it kind of leads us into the big elephant in the room question that I think everyone really wants to know, which is, what is heart-based emotional intelligence?
Well, so imagine the heart. I've drawn a picture of the heart here. It's the field of the heart. And those who practice meditation are familiar with this field of the heart. So I've taken a model of emotional intelligence that most of you are familiar with. You can put any model here. So this is only to build the familiarity. For example, awareness. Science has finally recognized that awareness is an important skill for, or part of the skill of emotional intelligence. And what is awareness? How do you develop awareness? And everybody knows that meditation is the best way to build awareness or to expand. We already have awareness, to expand our awareness. And we cannot expand our awareness when we are bombarded with thoughts. And I talked to you about 70,000 thoughts a day. So the seat of self-awareness is in the heart. It is one of the qualities of the heart. How do we define it? How do we develop it? How do we grow it? We will discuss subsequently. So self-awareness is something that is a quality of the heart. And look at self-regulation. What is self-regulation? It is impulse control. You have a thought and you have an impulse and you immediately want to eat the ice cream. Or you take a pause and ask yourself, do I really want to eat this ice cream? Right? Or somebody insults me, I feel like, giving using some bad words, and, you take a pause. So when you are able to unclutch yourself from your impulse, that is what is meant by self-regulation. It is more than that, but primarily that is what self-regulation is. But if you are caught up in your thoughts, you cannot self-regulate. You can only self-regulate if you unclutch yourself. And what is that unclutching? Where do you go to? Where do you move yourself? Where do you anchor yourself? It is a heart, right? And then self-motivation is another facet of emotional intelligence. Where does motivation come? And many people will say, oh, I'm motivated by money, I'm motivated by promotion, or I'm motivated by social status, I'm motivated by recognition or appreciation. Yes, they all motivate us, but they all come from outside. But all of us know that true motivation comes from within. The energy for change really comes from within, because the heart is that field of energy. And everybody knows it is the heart that beats, and along with it, every other organ in the body dances to the tune of the heart. So the heart is the source of all our energy. And then there is empathy. Empathy is, awareness of others, the social awareness. Again, that is a quality of the heart too, because the mind or the brain does not have, or our neural, system does not have the ability to empathize unless it is connected with the heart. It's a combination. I'm not saying it is just a function of the heart. It is when we connect our brains with or minds with our heart, that is when empathy is possible. And the resultant skill is social skills, ability to build relationships, ability to interact with others in a meaningful way. So truly, heart is the seat of emotional intelligence. And I'm sure your next question, I can anticipate your next question. So how do we develop these qualities, this emotional intelligence, which is already within our heart? How do we develop it? What are the practices that will enable us to develop these skills? Did I guess correct?
How did you know? How did you know that would be my next question? Yeah, given your experience as a heartfulness trainer, given your experience with diving deep, your own personal experience with heart-based meditation, what are the ways that we can pull those techniques into our daily lives in order to regulate the emotions, our emotional states, and what is the best way to achieve heart-based emotional intelligence?
Right. So before I get to it, I think the essential skill, the most foundational, fundamental skill is awareness, whether it is self-awareness or other awareness about the other person. Most of the time, since we have no separation between our thoughts or our emotions and ourselves, we are not able to create that distance, right? We don't know whether we like something, dislike something. We suddenly get rattled by something, or we get disturbed by something without even knowing it. Suddenly you look at yourself and you're disturbed, you're moody, or you feel like sulking, or you feel like hitting out at something. You don't even know why. Now, that why can come only when there is awareness. Now, let us look at how we can build awareness and all the qualities that is, the processes that is involved in building these, emotional intelligence. So, heartfulness practices such as meditation, they help to open the heart. Now, when you open, like I told you, that whenever you have a trauma, your heart gets closed. There is a contraction. Every trauma is represented by a contraction. And it is not only in the heart, but it extends to other organs too. For example, the organ that is closely associated with fear is the kidneys. Right? People who have enormous amount of uncontrolled fear, their kidneys fail at some point of time. The organ associated with anger is the liver, and all of us know that. And the organ that is associated with grief or sadness is our lungs. That is why you see in the rural areas people beating their chest when they feel grief, right? So, but the key is the heart, and because the heart is connected with everything, heart is a leader, and the heart connects with the subtle emanation. It is connected with the source. It is within us that provides the impetus for change, right? And emotional conditionings and patterns are recognized and replaced with authentic belief system. For example, if I have a belief system that all men are, if I am a woman and I have a belief system that all men are bad characters, then I will look at every man with suspicion, right? And if a man has a belief system that a woman is just for his pleasure, then he will look at every woman with that perception. And these are dysfunctional belief systems. Sometimes these come from our culture, our society, our schools, our families. Many of these belief systems, some of them come to us in very early childhood from our primary caretakers. So when we release our heart, when we start the practice of meditation and loosening up our heart, these conditionings and patterns, they leave us, especially when we do a particular practice, which I will talk to you about, which is called cleansing. It releases these conditionings and patterns, and the heart loosens up, it opens up. And then you replace them with authentic belief systems, which make you an authentic human being, right? And for that, you use the emotional intelligence from the heart, or which I call the heart's intelligence. And with practice, and without practice, nothing grows. These are things that we have to do on a daily basis. And with practice, emotional intelligence continues to grow till it matures into a balanced state, and we become an emotionally intelligent person who has emotional maturity, emotional resilience, and emotional balance. So the whole process is by connecting with our heart and doing things to develop our heart and our energies associated with the heart.
Great clarification. Now, I know we only have a little bit of time left, but I would love it if you could clarify some of those practices that we can utilize to continue to cultivate heart-based emotional intelligence.
All right. I can bring up a slide. So some of the practices that we, see in almost all spiritual practices, not just heartfulness, like yoga, for example. Yogic relaxation, the ability to release all the tensions in the body. And as I told you, our body is connected to our mind. And body is the place where everything connects together. So it is where we feel our emotions and feelings. if we had no body, we wouldn't be having any emotions or feelings, right? So any emotion that we feel or any emotional state that we feel in our body, and it contracts our body, it tightens up. And when these tightenings become chronic, it results in disease. And believe me, uh, you know, it is now scientifically proved that most of our diseases, including heart attacks or strokes or cancer and various other things, they have a direct correlation with our stress. And where do we store our stress? In our body. So yogic relaxation is a way to release the stresses in the body and prepare the body for advanced practices like meditation. And heartfulness has a very simple technique for relaxing the body. It takes 5 or 6 minutes. It is available on the website. You can practice it yourself. You can practice it from a trainer. So this is something which you do. If you do every day, it releases your body, frees up your body to do advanced practices like, for example, meditation. And what is meditation? Meditation is training your mind. And if you go deeper, it is just training your awareness and your attention. So these are the two things capabilities that we are training. And meditation is nothing about thinking about one thing on a consistent basis, on a continued basis. So in heartfulness meditation, we focus our attention on the heart and the source of life that is already present in the heart. So what happens when you do that? It's a double benefit. One is we are able to train our mind to pay attention to the heart and observe the heart through awareness. Second is it develops the heart. The energies of the heart change when we pay attention to it. That's why it is called an experiment, a quantum experiment, where you are the experimenter, you are the experiment, and you are the result of the experiment. So that's another powerful way for self-transformation and to develop emotional intelligence. Third is contemplation. Contemplation is a way where we access the reflexive action of the mind. The human beings are the only organism, if I may call it, that has the ability to observe itself. So we have the ability to observe ourselves, and that is what helps us to understand the roots and origins of our emotions. What are the triggers? What are the conditionings that is creating the emotional turbulence that we are experiencing? And as we contemplate and go deeper and deeper into ourselves, we become more and more familiar with our own emotional landscape. And that is a benefit of contemplation. And then there is a cleansing. And cleansing is a process of removing the impressions that are formed in our mind stuff through a process. It's a technique, and when you remove these impressions, which are called samskaras in the Indian tradition, or in the scientific way, if you look at it, it is nothing but the networks that are formed through our continued thinking and emotions, feelings. So every day you clean your network, you clean the excess baggage that you are carrying, whether you call it, removing your samskaras or removing your neural patterns, doesn't matter. You are able to do it, and when you do it, you come out as a new person. You come out free of some of these baggages that you're carrying. So through relaxation, we release our body, and through cleansing, we also release our mind. We remove all the excess weight that we are holding. So these 4 practices and they're very simple. They're available free of cost. There is no dogmas associated with it. Anybody from any religious background, any tradition can practice it. It is, it's something that once you learn, you can continue doing it all your life, and it will benefit you in a very powerful way. There are other practices like exercising and breathing that also can release your body as well as mind, which which allows the free flow of emotional energy, which is already there. But the real intuition can be developed only through these practices of meditation and contemplation, which really helps us to develop it and and use it in our day-to-day life.
James Uncle, what I appreciated about everything that you shared today was that you took the scientific approach on emotions. You really broke it down and explained why we have our emotional states. You really highlighted what an emotionally intelligent person looked like, and then you shared these incredible practices that are able to help us to achieve that goal of becoming more emotionally cognizant. And when we break it down like this, it's just so simple, from the science behind it to the ways to become more intelligent and emotionally intelligent. So thank you for taking the time to share all of your knowledge with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for asking the right questions.
Tried my best.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the participants who've listened to this, and I hope you benefit out of it. This is only a sharing of knowledge, but only practice can can change us. And just the practice of meditation and contemplation and cleansing and relaxation, it triggers this process of expansion, which is absolutely essential for developing emotional intelligence. Thank you so much.
To all of you who tuned in, to all of you who have been able to watch and be a part of this, thank you so much for watching another Heartfulness Wellness webinar. We hope that we'll get the opportunity to connect with all of you again very soon. I hope all of you are staying safe given the current unique situation with the coronavirus pandemic. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.